Welcome back, dear viewers, to another compelling exploration into the complex legacy of one of history's most iconic figures. In our previous video, we delved into the controversial question of why Winston Churchill was considered by some to be worse than Hitler. Today, we turn our attention to a nuanced examination by Churchill's character, seeking to answer the age-old question: hero or villain? A man who led Britain through the tumultuous waters of World War II, a charismatic orator whose words stirred the hearts of a nation. But hold on tight, because the story doesn't end there. We are about to peel back the layers of Churchill's legacy, exposing the hidden facts that challenge the conventional narrative. Get ready for a roller coaster of revelations as we explore the dark side of Winston Churchill, the controversies, the decisions that spark heated debates, and the complex portrait that emerges when we dare to look beyond the laurels. This is not your average history lesson. This is Winston Churchill, hero or villain, the dark side of Winston Churchill, where history meets mystery. Stay tuned. In 2002, the British Broadcasting Company undertook a survey that hailed Winston Churchill as the most notable figure in history. The prevailing image of Churchill often portrays him as an elderly statesman characterized by a bulldog-like demeanor, a cigar in his mouth, and a cane in hand. His legacy is chiefly associated with his role as Prime Minister of Great Britain, steadfastly opposing fascism during World War II. However, a less widely known aspect of Churchill's persona involves his controversial views on race, with some critics contending that they verge on aligning with the ideologies of Nazism. In a 1927 visit to Italy during Mussolini's reign, Churchill expressed admiration for the fascist leader, claiming that his heart belonged to Mussolini. He also made general statements supporting Nazism, suggesting that it served the world by combating communism. In 1935, Churchill greeted Hitler and praised him for his courage, perseverance, and vitality, even as Hitler was restoring to massacre and concentration camps. However, Churchill later supported the war against Germany, participating in the Tehran meeting with Roosevelt and Stalin to discuss opening a second front. Churchill's loyalty to the British Empire was deeply ingrained, stemming from his aristocratic background as a descendant of the Dukes of Marlborough and as an ardent supporter of Britain's right to own colonies and their resources. Churchill's views reflected a belief in racial hierarchy, where those under the rule of the crown were considered lower than Europeans. He justified acts of cruelty by asserting that a more robust, wiser, and more developed race taken the place of native populations in America and Australia, rejecting the notion that their mass extermination constituted genocide. John Charmley, the author of Churchill, The End of Glory, contends that Churchill believed in a racial hierarchy and even formulated his scale. For example, he ranked Indians above Africans and white Catholics above white people, but still below white Protestant Christians. He considered the British to be at the top of the overall society hierarchy. At the same time, however, Churchill never showed any compassion for the representatives of superior races who stood in his way. In December 1944, the British Army carried out a massacre in Greece. On the streets of Athens, soldiers shot 28 people and wounded 128 more. This was not a massacre of supporters of Nazism. Instead, they killed partisans who opposed Nazi Germany. When the British entered Greece, they demanded the complete disarmament of the partisans. In response, 2 lakh people took to the streets in protest, and Churchill gave the order to direct weapons at these patriots. However, Churchill did not consider the partisans to be heroes. In his words, they were pathetic bandits. The head of the government feared that members of the resistance sympathized with communism, which posed a threat to the empire. When Churchill saw the danger to the empire, he was ready to kill even his compatriots. As Minister of War and Minister of Hate, he led the persecution of Irish fighters for independence from 1917 to 1921. At his order, special Royal Irish Police units were created, committing many atrocities in Ireland, including the bombing of the city of Cork and the massacre at Croke Park, where they shot 13 people during a football match. Churchill called the Irish strange for their reluctance to become British and threatened to send planes to bomb the rebels. The invention of other politicians was the only thing that prevented this disaster. However, Nigel Knight, a political scientist from Cambridge University, argues that Winston cannot be called anti-Irish, pointing to his later role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Irish Peace Treaty. This is not the only case of Churchill's ill treatment of his country's inhabitants. One of the most scandalous episodes of his biography is the event associated with a jewelry store robbery. When bandits killed 2 police officers, the robbers were found in a house on Sydney Street. Churchill went to the scene and forbade putting out the fire. As a result, the bandits burned to death, and the newspapers, Prime Minister and Parliament were convicted of atrocity. However, Churchill's brutality was not limited to criminals but extended to ordinary citizens as well. He abhorred union members and had once even suggested forcibly sterilizing hundreds of these degenerate Britons, adding that harsh labor colonies should be created for such vagrants. In November of 1910, as Secretary of Interior Affairs, Churchill sent soldiers to quell miners' protests in Wales. At that time, there were no weapons involved, but after a year, troops suppressed Union protests in Liverpool, where they also killed 2 protesters. In 1919, as the Minister of War, he sent more than 10,000 soldiers and tanks to Glasgow, Scotland, to quell the issue regarding those on strike. However, Alan Packard, the director of the Churchill Archive Centre, asks that we remember that the famous Englishman later headed 2 governments that were very loyal to the trade unions. Similar ups and downs can be traced throughout Winston Churchill's life and 70-year political career. According to experts, Winston Churchill's behavior reflects an instability in his psyche. During periods of emotional upsurge, he displayed intense productivity, working day and night, implementing reforms, and politically writing literary works, surpassing the combined output of Charles Dickens and John Galsworthy. In 1953, Churchill was even awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. During these active periods, he could empathize with people, expressing sorrow for the compatriots who died in World War II. However, Churchill experienced prolonged periods of depression that he referred to as his Black Dog. During these times, he perceived conspiracies around him involving the Kremlin's hegemon, Islamists, and colonial uprising threatening the foundations of the empire. Churchill battled his demons during these episodes, sometimes lacking empathy and overstepping the boundaries of humanity. Psychology suggests that these lapses could be indicative of bipolar disorder or manic depression. Gerald Post of George Washington University defined Churchill's condition as semi-bipolar. Additionally, psychiatrists believe Churchill suffered from pathological narcissism, excessively elevating himself, and his actions were demeaning others. Contempt from Churchill often grew into real-life hatred and atrocities, particularly towards those he considered an inferior race. As Secretary of State for Colonies in 1921, he sent bombers to peaceful Arab settlements in what is now Iraq. The bombings destroyed people's dwellings, and Churchill, proud of the raid's effectiveness, offered to use poison gas on the rebels. Parliament rejected this plan, and Churchill did not understand why chemical weapons should not be used against Muslims, whom he considered mad fanatics more dangerous than rabid dogs. Despite claims that Churchill respected Islam, as evidenced by building a mosque in London in 1940 and allegedly contemplating conversion to Islam, he still proposed using tear gas in India to suppress anti-colonial actions. In 1942, during a famine in Bengal, Churchill ordered the entire rice crop to be taken away for the needs of the British Army, exacerbating the crisis while he continued to enjoy luxurious living. Hundreds of thousands of people in Bengal died daily from the famine, creating open-air graves in small towns filled with corpses. The account describes a tragic famine in Calcutta in 1943, where people half-starving died near a barn filled with rice that had not yet been distributed. The bodies were left unburied, causing epidemics in the capital. Estimates suggest that the famine claimed the lives of 2 or 4 million Indians. Leopold Amory, the British Secretary of State in India and a supporter of imperial politics, expressed horror at the tragedy and drew parallels between Churchill and Hitler. Some attempts to justify Churchill's action claim he was preoccupied with military affairs and unaware of the famine, but evidence suggests otherwise. Churchill, in various statements, blamed the Bengalis themselves, arguing they were to blame due to their high reproduction rates. In 1952, Churchill decided to free up the fertile highlands of Kenya for white colonists, employing methods reminiscent of Nazi actions. At least 150,000 men, women, and children were sent to concentration camps, where they faced torture, electric shocks, hot irons, rape, and castration from minor offense. Share your thoughts on Churchill, a national hero or deserving of criticism. Discuss recent London protests challenging his legacy. Should figures with controversial aspects be celebrated, or do we need a more nuanced understanding? Like, subscribe and hit the bell for more engaging content.